4,000 people are watching. I got 300 new subscribers. But that was a lesson on how not to grow, because I quickly realized that.
Hey, Sean, Chandler here, and I am with Cody Leach, and we are talking about YouTube, his story, as well as his thoughts on YouTube growth. This is part 2 of I don't know how many part series, probably 4-part series,
10.
all about YouTube and Cody's thoughts on the whole thing. In part 1, we heard his story in detail of how he went from a kid that just loved movies to doing YouTube full time. And today, we're specifically talking about the tips, the tactics, the thoughts that led to that growth. With that said, when it comes to YouTube growth, how did you start growing on YouTube?
I started growing by doing trailer reactions. Like, that was kind of one of the big things that seemed, everybody that kind of started in our little era, in our circle, that seemed to be a common denominator, was we're trying to do this show or we're trying to do these reviews. Nobody's really watching, but if I react to a trailer, all of a sudden 4,000 people are watching. I got 300 new subscribers. But that was a lesson on how not to grow, because I quickly realized that everybody that subscribes for trailer reactions does not stick around for your other content. And so you're padding out this number, and YouTube is getting confused about, why do you have 10,000 people on your channel that 200 show up for every video? And so very quickly I had to really work to kind of change the landscape.
It's like, just pause right there. Not all subscribers are equal.
Yes.
It's a vanity number. Like, it's, of course, it's great to see that number go up, but you want the right people to subscribe that actually want to watch your content, the content that you actually want to make.
Yes.
And so if you grow doing something you're not all that interested in, you get the wrong people subscribed, and all of a sudden they want you to do things that's not what you're about. So you have to be careful of what you do to try and grow your channel.
Yeah, it's like you want to have this really fancy Italian restaurant, but you have to start off with a little burger hot dog stand.
Yeah.
And then suddenly so many people love your burgers, they don't care about how good your spaghetti is. And so it's very similar to that. So there was an era there where I realized that a lot of those subs were quote unquote empty subs. And so I started kind of re-gearing how I did things. Right about the time that I found my horror niche, I also started to focus much more on doing reviews and focusing on specific films and rankings, which is what I wanted to do, and less so all these things that were successful that I had zero passion for. And so I kind of had to retrain my audience and retrain my YouTube a little bit to where suddenly I started becoming known for the things that I wanted to be known for. I'm doing these review series. I'm doing these little cold open skits. I'm doing these rankings as like a celebration of getting done with this review series. And that's what people started showing up for, which is what I wanted. So I started doing the trailer reaction thing, or anything that's kind of this discoverable content, just when it made sense to fit in with all of that. So that was kind of my initial struggle, learning, growing pain as far as how to grow. After that, it was just getting really good and getting really amplifying the knowledgeable side of myself, not just random guy that can give big words about the movie being good or bad, and also being able to make people kind of laugh with my personality. Like, me calling my channel Cody Leach was not a lack of creativity or an accident. I'm kind of what I want to present.
Yeah.
And so I know that there's so many channels out there, and even since we've started, there's been millions more that are trying to do the same things that we're doing. The one thing that they will never have is me. And so that's kind of what I started to put forward was, I'm going to suck you in with my personality. You either get it or you don't, but that's kind of what the value of my channel is. The thoughts on movies, the rankings, my experience, whatever, is kind of the fringe benefit to all of that. And so that was kind of my journey from, once I figured out how to get people to subscribe and how to stick around for what I wanted to do, to then putting more focus on just making that more the premier content that I was putting out.
One thing you kind of said in there is, like, just learn to get good at it. Actually making it good. Not just doing it, but being good at it. I remember back around when I was starting, before I started, a guy named John Campia, who was one of my inspirations for starting, he put out a video on, like, how to be an online movie pundit, and it was about whether YouTube, blogging. And one of the things he said in there, he goes, one of the reasons you're probably not growing is that you're not good. And I was like, yeah, but I am. I mean, other people, I know that's true of other people, they're not good, but I am. So I need you to tell me the real tips. Like, what's the real secret to growing? We have to be good. You actually have to make good content. And it's kind of like, if you've ever written a song, You think your song's good. Your mom thinks your song is good. But if no one else wants you to sing the song, your song's probably not as good as you think it is.
Exactly.
Same with on YouTube. You're excited about what you're doing. Your mom's excited about what you're doing. Your friend's not going to tell you you suck. Mm-hmm. Maybe your friends will. Some friends will.
Hi, CP.
But if no one seems to be subscribing, if no one clicked on your video and went, that was awesome, mm-hmm. you're probably not very good yet. Mm-hmm. And you can get better.
Yeah.
If you choose to. If you choose to work on your strengths, minimize your weaknesses, and grow in your knowledge base, vocabulary, you can get better. Yeah. Sorry, that was a long rabbit trail on one word that you said.
You're absolutely right. And the funny thing about YouTube when you're making content is that's a very multi-layered thing to strive for. Getting good. Well, what am I getting good at? Am I getting good at the editing side? Am I getting good at the production side? Am I getting good at how I talk, how I present myself?
Just being charismatic.
Or just knowing what I'm talking about. Yeah. Like, it sounds cruel, but there's some people out there that just, they don't understand the language of how to talk about film. They're like, this movie sucks because it's not good, and this looks dumb and I hate it, or this is awesome, it's the greatest thing ever. And it's like, well, that's
no specificity, no analysis, no comparisons to anything else. It's just they're feeling with no depth to what they're saying because they don't understand storytelling or filmmaking or the technical side of things. And so all you can say is adjectives, which anyone can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not offering value. You're not offering insight. You're not offering a perspective.
Yeah.
So grow it, like having that vocabulary to be able to say something, but also being fun to watch and entertaining, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're trying to take your viewers on a journey. Like when they click on your movie review, the question or the journey is this good or bad and why? And if you can't take them on that journey of, this is how I felt on it on this spectrum of good to bad, and this is how I arrived at that with educated or insightful reasons why, then there's not a whole lot of value for them to keep watching. You could just put out a one-sentence tweet, Doctor Strange sucked, official review Cody Leach, and that's all they really need to know. And so there's a lot of different things you have to learn. You have to learn how to connect with an audience, look them in the eye in the camera, and make them feel like they're in the room with you. Which is why when we do fan meetups or whatever, people feel like they already know you, even though they've never been within miles of you, because they've felt that connection. And so you have to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to...
You meet people that they say things that are articulate, but it's like it was too scripted. Like they're using a teleprompter, and so it just doesn't have that conversational feel that YouTube is social media. People like it because it feels like they're in the room with you talking.
Exactly.
And that's that skill set of being able to feel like you're... We only met in person 2 months ago. And there's always the potential to be really awkward, but as it turns out, it wasn't, because we watched 1,000 hours of each other's videos, and we talked on the internet a lot because we have that skill set of being able to capture our essence over the internet. So learning to do that. Yeah,
and a big part of that as well is actually being yourself. There's certainly demographics, or there's certainly ideas out there where you can play a character. One that comes to the top of my mind, like Dr. Wolfula, this guy that dresses up as a very fake, like 50s era wolf. Like, that's a character. You wouldn't walk up and recognize him. But if you're doing something like us, where you have your real face, you're trying to present your real thoughts, you don't want to stray too far from who you are, because then all of a sudden you're kind of fake to a certain degree. You can amplify certain parts of your personality that maybe you don't feel comfortable doing in other settings, but that's part of the thing where people connect with you, and they can kind of, after a while, they can tell there's something disingenuous there. But that was really where I started to grow in my middle journey, from where I started to get growth, started to get an audience, started to get this community building, and to kind of to where I decided I was comfortable enough to go full time is figuring out how to get people a certain amount of content that they like, maybe a certain amount of content that I hope that they will like, and testing the waters with it. But also just having them know what to expect as far as a certain benchmark of quality from me. They know that I'm not going to just shoot a video on my phone outside the theater and that's my review. They know I'm going to go home, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to put some production into it, I'm going to try to give you reasons why I arrived at this. And after a while, people start to understand your movie taste a little bit, to where sometimes if you have an oddball, you're like, this isn't usually my thing, but this is why it worked, and it's fun for them. They know you to a certain degree. And so there's that whole side of things. And then I was also really big on the community side, as far as linking up with people, like you're one of the predominant ones, linking up with people that are very like-minded or have the same tastes or going on the same journey on YouTube. Created Autop Stream after a while, which is, a group of buddies that I've always been doing content with. And then you kind of build in their communities along with it. And everybody starts to become this big bubble to where there's Sean Chandler fans that also hang out in the Cody Leach pool. And it kind of creates, with other social media, other areas for your fan base to kind of camp out. And so they're always there.
And when you do collaborations, you share an audience. And you show up on my video, I show up in your video, we post them at the same time, and we're just sharing an audience right there. And just even the idea of, like, you've been in a number of Facebook groups, both of us are pretty involved on Twitter. You just join a community where, once again, the thing about YouTube is it's not television. Television is one way. Person just talks at you. YouTube is social media. It's all about that interaction. And so then when you join into communities where people can actually talk with you, when people can interact with you on Twitter, it just makes it much more personal and has a much deeper connection than just, I heard you say a thing.
Yeah. And it also, whenever you have like these built-in friendships that people have seen and people have kind of grown with you, and they know to a certain extent, depending on how long they've been following you, kind of the story of how you guys have grown as friends or grown as collaborators, people are much more likely to tune into other people's channels. That's where a lot of people make mistakes, where they think that if I just get Sean Chandler to mention my name once, I'll spark. And that's like having Metallica say, all right, guys, when you're done watching our show, go down the street to that little club over there and check out this band. They're really cool. Versus if you and I do something, it's like I'm the opening band. They're there for me and for you. There's different fan bases. And so it's a creative way to kind of blend different genres of people, different types of people. They might show up for MCU stuff, and then all of a sudden we're talking about horror one time, and they're like, I kind of like horror. I'll go over there for that, and vice versa.
And also, there's a little bit with kind of collaborations, also the 1 + 1 = 3 effect of each are effective on their own, put them together, and it has that extra layer of something interesting. Like,
correct.
When the Expendables came out, all those guys were still making movies on their own, but there's a unique novelty of, let's throw all of them in the thing together. Exactly. Well, I got to check that one out. And suddenly that movie made way more than any of those guys' movies were making on its own, because 1 + 1, in that case, 1 + 1 + 1 equaled way more than whatever that actually adds up to. And there's just something to that community synergy and the energy and momentum that comes with it. All right, so if we're going to kind of like fire off the best kind of tips, the things that you think, this is what people need to get, or kind of the reverse version of it of, this is what I see people don't get.
Don't do this. Yeah.
So the kind of fire off some of those just power tips.
So, well, the first thing, the most important thing right off the bat, especially when you're starting off, is figure out how to connect with your audience, whatever that means, either with really good editing or with your personality or with your unique perspective or unique take on something that everybody has done, but you're doing it a little differently. And that's where you're going to stand out from everybody else.
And it takes time.
It takes a long time.
You can't just go, I've got an idea, I've figured out how I'll stand out. Absolutely. You got to have like 10 of those. You got to have like 20 of those. We could sit down and say all the things we did that are very memorable for us, but they didn't cause the momentum. They were experiments that we enjoyed the process of doing them. But we did something else to find the right idea and our unique thing where people connected. Yeah,
and you have to be creative nowadays, because YouTube and even just the movie side of YouTube is so constantly growing and is so competitive. Like Jeremy Jahns and Chris Stuckman are the best at what they do for the long time. If they started today, they would have a hard time growing. And it's because they were the first. Everybody else can't do what they do. Right. They have to do something different or do it a new way.
And everyone that does what they do is compared to them.
Immediately.
Even if it makes no sense, the comparison. I don't have at all the same style as Stuckman. I do like a lot of rankings, but I was in a corner with a blue wall with Blu-rays behind me. You're just ripping off Stuckman.
Yeah.
Well, no, but like that's what people could just kind of think. They were there first, and they've been ripped off thousands of times. So what are you going to do to stand out? If you do the same thing as everyone else, you compete with everyone else.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do to stand out and be unique and offer value?
Absolutely. And then once you find your audience, the big struggle is learning the technicalities of YouTube, learning how different algorithms and how different analytics work, what they actually mean, how they relate to your video, and studying them and figuring out if there's some changes that need to be made, and what changes impact what analytic, like click-through rate or audience retention or anything. Because you want people to watch your video by clicking on the thumbnail. So you got to sell them with that. Then you want them to just keep watching because of what you're saying is interesting or entertaining. And then you want them to watch something else.
Yep.
And so you're constantly selling yourself. You're constantly figuring out, how do I keep them around? How do I do this? How do I do that? And so even just one video is this multi-layered little experiment in many different ways. And so it's about figuring out how you're going to figure that out and how you're going to consistently deliver that. And then the hard part is, once you've consistently delivered that, figuring out when and how you're going to evolve from that, which is the hardest part that I've been dealing with since going for full time. Is I've been doing this thing for so long and it's succeeded a certain amount that I'm happy with. But what's the next step? When do I decide that there's a ceiling there? When do I decide that I need to change something or do something differently? Or even if it's just changing the intro or changing the thumbnail style or changing how I edit the video or putting a few more graphics. It could be a small little change, but it's like going to the same restaurant over and over and over again. The menu never changes. You might love that restaurant. You might love your meal, but after a while you're like, I know what to expect. I don't need to go there. And it's the same thing. That's why TV shows only last for a certain amount of seasons, because there's a time to get out. You don't want to get out of YouTube. You just want to evolve.
Right. And that's tough.
It is.
You don't want to fix something that's not broken, but you don't want it to break because you didn't maintain it.
Yeah.
And find that right maintenance. And in this world, maintenance means slowly growing, slowly introducing new things. So if you were trying to give some advice to someone that they got like 1,000 subs, in a sense, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You think if you're standing out and there's 1,000 people in front of you, that's a big crowd that would freak most of us out. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's also obviously more that you can have. So if that person, they've got an audience, but it feels like they're kind of losing momentum. What would be your advice for that person to try and break through that ceiling and keep going?
I would tell them to figure out why those 1,000 people are there and hold on to that. Like, keep that soul intact, but also try to reach others. Try to figure out why more people aren't latching onto you. Are you too niche? Are you not niche enough? Are you delivering a type of content that 1,000 people might enjoy, but there's 100,000 other people that do the same thing, and a lot of people prefer that person's? Or is it just a matter of frequency of uploading? Sometimes people don't upload enough. Sometimes they upload too much. 7 videos a day, not a good idea. 1 video a month, not a good idea unless you're Mr. Beast level or something like that. So
if it's an amazing one video, that feels like you spent a month on it, fair enough.
Yeah. If you get the return on it.
In the movie space, there's probably not a lot of people that are putting out videos that are 1 video per month videos.
Exactly. And the other thing that I would say, which is actually advice that I have given to some friends of mine that are kind of struggling with growth, is make sure that the type of content that you're creating is a good use of your time. Like, if you're spending 3 weeks editing this one video that's only going to reach 300 people, maybe save that.
Yeah.
Save that level for something that's like a year event video. Do something that only takes you a couple hours a few times a week. It might feel weird to restrict yourself or to scale yourself back or to not give your all to every video, but you don't have to give your all to every video. Don't make it suck, but do some things that you can pump out 2 or 3 videos a week to get traction, to have people that are subscribed, they're satisfied because they're not waiting around for 6 weeks for you to upload something. But at the same time, you're not wasting all of this time. It's just like if you were getting paid for it, if you were the guy that owned the company, are you going to pay the guy that's getting 3 videos a week done for minimum wage? Or are you going to pay the guy that takes 6 weeks to do 1 video? You can very much boil it down to something as simple as that.
Final question. Next group up. This person's got 10,000 subscribers. I remember the first time I knew someone that had 7,000 subscribers, and I thought, I know someone that has 7,000. That's amazing. They got 10,000 subscribers. They got 20,000. Like they're something's working. A good group of people are connecting. What's your advice for that person that they've got something good? If it's just their hobby and that's as far as they want it to go, it's in a great spot. But if they want to keep going, what's your advice for that person that really does have an audience? Something has clicked with a lot of people. What do you say to them?
It's going to be a lot of the same answers as the first person, but you could probably add on to the fact of find a community somewhere, whether it's the niche that you're going after, like a community of an audience that you're looking for that maybe you haven't found, or just other like-minded creators like you, because like we were talking about earlier about, exponential growth and sharing, the same pool of audience or whatever, that really does do wonders when you're in that weird middle stage where you've found an audience, but there's other people out there that I guarantee are doing the same things as you or struggling with the same things as you, and you guys can kind of boost each other. That's one of the things that I love about our little group Autop stream or whatever, is because we've got so many different personalities. We got, one guy very film education minded, another guy that can edit like nobody's business, and then you and I, very different audiences, but we can kind of push each other and kind of give each other advice here and there, or spark an idea like 31 on 31. So I love doing it. It's similar but different, and we do something different every single year, and you grow together in a certain degree. So I think that really is, there's a lot of magic to that approach when you're in that middle section, 10,000, 20,000, somewhere in there, if you're hitting that ceiling.
So any final thoughts when it comes to YouTube growth that you want to leave us with?
The ultimate thing that I can say, because everybody grows at their own rate. Everybody succeeds at their own rate. Some people can have a viral video. Some people will never have a viral video. The main thing is never lose track of the fun. Never lose track of why you wanted to do it in the first place. If you start YouTube today and your only desire is to get rich, just stop. If you're somebody that's passionate about what you're doing, you might never find more than 2,000 people, no matter what you do. Sometimes the YouTube algorithm just doesn't work for some people. So never lose track of why you're doing it, because if suddenly you get into this so that you can do something that you love for a living and you lose the love, well, you just found another job that you're not happy with.
All righty. Thank you so much for sharing your advice. This, I said before, is part 2 of a 4-part series. We're going to come back next time and talk about what Cody would do if you were starting over today. So if you're someone that's just starting on YouTube, your channel is brand new, that's the one you want to check out of, like, what do we think? In light of what we know, how would we start over today? See you there.